So I want to go over Brian Gutekunst, Packers GM, his press conference after this Aaron Rodgers trade went down yesterday afternoon. And this press conference was scheduled, I think, in the past few days. And almost immediately when Brian Gutekunst, like right after the trade was announced, Brian Gutekunst came out and gave this press conference. So I want to give his thoughts, what he sort of had to say about Rodgers, sort of why they decided to part ways, which we already sort of know. But go into that, go into some things that he had to say about the draft, go into what he thinks about Jordan Love and what he sees in Love and what he's seen in Love the past few seasons in his development. And if you guys are new to the channel, I put out Packers news every day, so feel free to subscribe down below. So first off here, we have Brian Gutekunst asked about why it's the right thing for the Packers to move on from Aaron Rodgers. So he says this: I think where our team is at, obviously Aaron is up there in age, and has however many years he has, and he's got some really good football left in him. But I think for us, it was just as we got through the offseason and started talking about where we wanted to go, this made a little bit of sense for us. We wanted to get his input, like I told you guys in the past, and would have loved to have that and kind of see where he sat with that. That didn't happen. That was a little bit unfortunate and disappointing for me, but at the same time, I just think as we move forward, we're really excited about where Jordan could go. He needs to play, and having him sit another year would really delay where we are going and what we're trying to build. So Brian Gutekunst and Aaron Rodgers never actually had that conversation about what the future looked like for Rodgers and the Packers going forward. We heard in the past month that Brian Gutekunst came out a month or so ago and said that he tried to call Rodgers and that Rodgers didn't respond to any of his calls, and because Rodgers didn't pick up those calls and talk with Brian Gutekunst, they had to sort of plan for the future in case he decided to leave, and that's when they started shopping him around. Rodgers then went into his darkness retreat, came out and sort of learned about the Packers, shopping him around, didn't really like that, and so he wanted to move on to the Jets, which is exactly what happened. And Brian Gutekunst was asked by a reporter, have you spoken to Rodgers at all, since that? And he said no. So he's just spoken through his people, whether that's his agent or someone else like that. Which is, an interesting way for this whole thing to end with Rodgers and the front office, because for the past few years, there were times where it seems like, the communication between Rodgers and Brian Gutekunst wasn't great. A couple of years ago, that sort of led to Rodgers taking his time in the offseason. He wanted the Packers to, give him some more kind of input in conversations and decisions. And we saw Rodgers get Randall Cobb all the way to Green Bay because that was one of the stipulations of Rodgers coming back in, was that 2021? So Brian Gutekunst's offseason sort of knew that there was a chance that the Packers would move on from Rodgers, and he seems to have confidence in Jordan Love, because I don't think he would have done this and really tried to move on from Rodgers as he did if he didn't believe in Jordan Love's potential. So here's his quote on what he thinks Jordan Love can be, what he's sort of seen from his development. He said this: we've seen steady growth through his first 3 years here. I've talked about the challenges that he faced with no preseason early and going through some things. But last year I thought through practice, there was a number of times because of Aaron's injuries where he had to kind of take over the ones during practice in some of the competitive areas. I just think you saw him grow and grow and grow. He didn't get nearly as many opportunities as he would have liked last season during games, but when he did, he certainly answered the bell. And I think it's just natural maturation as a person. Again, you guys know what it is put on a quarterback in the National Football League's plate. Starting quarterback is significant, and there's a lot to that, not only on the field. And they're going to go through a lot of challenges, but I think we started to see him grow into that role, felt more confident. So Brian Gutekunst is confident in what he's seen, the development he's seen in Jordan Love from his first season coming in 2020. And as he noted, in the first year, that was the COVID year where there was no preseason, so Jordan Love didn't have the opportunity as most young QBs do coming to the league to have that time in the offseason, to have the playing time in the preseason to sort of, get some experience, learn some things. He didn't have all that, so his development was sort of slowed down because of that. But over the past year, because Rodgers had those injuries, Love took a ton of snaps even throughout practices because of Rodgers' fractured thumb. And Brian Gutekunst seems to have been pleased with how Jordan Love looks in those practices, and he seems confident in what Love can be and sort of his potential going into 2023. And I talked about this in the past month or so about how I thought it was likely the Packers would, draft a quarterback just because they only have Danny Etling on the roster now besides Jordan Love. Brian Gutekunst did say in this interview that he wants to have at least 3 quarterbacks on the roster by the time they start having all these workouts and they start throwing a lot and tons of those kinds of things. And so let me read this quote he had to say about wanting a quarterback. He said, "I like to have at least 3 before we get to any of that throwing stuff," which I said. And he said, "There's some guys in this draft we're very high on. If they happen to be at the right spots, I won't hesitate." So even though Love is here, Brian Gutekunst will not hesitate to draft a quarterback. Hopefully, it's not in the first 2 rounds. I'd rather the Packers use a draft pick somewhere else. Now, however, because we do have 2 second-round picks, 1 first-round pick, I'd be more okay with a second-rounder, but I'd rather see a QB drafted in maybe around 3 or later, just because I think, in those top 45 picks, the 3 picks the Packers have, it could be better used, for wide receiver, tight end, edge rusher, whichever position is available at that time where there's value. And I think to add a quarterback, it's smart in case Love doesn't pan out, which I believe he will. I think he is going to be a solid quarterback in the NFL. But to get another guy sometime in the draft is smart just in case you need some kind of backup plan. And as I mentioned yesterday, the fact that the Packers they should have 2 first-round picks in 2024. One of them it depends on Rodgers' playing time. If he plays 65% of the snaps this year for the Jets, then next season, the Packers will have the Jets' first-round picks. So we should have, in all likelihood, 2 first-round picks in 2024, which would give the Packers the ability to move up in the draft in 2024. If Love doesn't play well in 2023, they think they need to add another young prospect, another young player. They could potentially use those first-round picks and move up higher to draft a guy they like next season. It's just a good thing to sort of be able to do. There's a lot of flexibility because of all these draft picks the Packers have gotten in return in this Aaron Rodgers trade. And so those are the biggest things I think he talked about in that press conference. And if you guys want to stay up to date with all Packers news, feel free to subscribe down below. And if you haven't subscribed to my newsletter, I'm trying to write at least 1 a day there, at least on the weekdays. So you can subscribe to that down below, click the link, enter your email. But that's all I have for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.